So hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Now this is more or less unplanned because of the whole, as Tech Jesus Steve Burke put it, human malware situation right now. Well, it looks like my friend won't be able to visit me in April, so he just went ahead and sent me the two graphics cards that he would have brought for me. And I'm also gonna send him some water cooling stuff that I would have given him. And one of these two graphics cards that he sent me is this Radeon HD 7950 right here. It is based off the reference PCB, or at least the that PCB that's designed to run without a heatsink on the VRM. So you see all those little exposed copper pads right here and somewhere in the card. That's basically just exposed power plane, so it acts as a heatsink. And it's an XFX model, and it has a few upgrades because I think this PCB generally comes with a 5-phase. This has a 6, but it's a 5 now because of this little body right here. You can see that this high side MOSFET has a little problem. That little problem being it has a crater in it. And if you know anything about VRMs or just graphics card PCBs, basically you're gonna have at least heard of that. Having high side MOSFETs be damaged or blown up or having a hole in them is pretty bad, which results in dead graphics cards. And that's exactly what I thought when I saw this card arrive in this state. And my friend assured me that it worked when he put it into his PC. So at first I thought, well, looks like rough shipping, until I turned it on myself, crossing fingers that short circuit protection will kick in before it catches fire. But to my surprise, nothing happened. The card booted up. I got into Windows and installed drivers, and it ran benchmarks. So I have a theory as to why the card still works, and that is that the high side MOSFET failed open. So it's broken now, like, don't know how much you can see. When it arrived, it just had a crack in it, and I just poked at it a little bit, and then two pieces of debris fell out, and one of them had a few copper contacts on them, and the other one had a piece of silicon on it. So that MOSFET internally is pretty damn broken now. And to my luck, it seems like it failed open, because, well, the card is obviously running and it's throwing no errors, nothing whatsoever. I haven't tried overclocking it. I just did one Firestrike pass at stock. So yeah, this card is kind of undead now because, well, it has this blown up high side MOSFET on it. And if you look at it, two of the solder boards right next to it on the right side, they look unlike anything else on this card, which leads me to believe that either this MOSFET was manually soldered by someone, or just got so hot that the solder melted, which I think is the more probable cause. So yeah, this card is pretty much immortal. It survived, it still survives a broken high side MOSFET, and there are also two pretty deep scratches on the die, which are pretty thin. They actually look like cracks, but well, a cracked die is pretty much also a instantly dead thing for a graphics card, and obviously this works. So this card is freaking immortal, I think. And there's a similar story with the heatsink for it. Like, this is how it looks now. I got it without any fans on them, so my friend told me the fans are dead and he removed the shroud and the fans. And what I did is I took the fans off the heatsink from the GTX 560 Ti 448 and I just put them on here with tape because I don't have hot glue right now. And then yeah, just here's the fan connector, plugs in right there, works perfectly, even cools pretty decently, like below 60 degrees in the 10-minute Firestrike stress test. So yeah, it is quite fragile though. So yeah, and so yeah, apart from the part that this card is pretty much unkillable, this is not my first AMD card, but it is my first high-end AMD card. Like, I have an RX 570, but Polaris never really was high-end. This was. So this is a Tahiti core. It's an HD 7950, so it's like HD 7950s, 7970s, they are so similar you can crossfire them. Like, here you have your crossfire fingers, which is not a SLI, it's an AMD card. You can, like, there are more than just a few things that scream AMD card when you see this PCB. So the first thing is this memory module right here, that's at 45 degrees. That's AMD. The rotated die, that's AMD. This little VRM over here, which is VDDCI, that's AMD. Those crossfire fingers, that's AMD. The fact that we have 2 mini display ports over here, also very AMD. And yeah, so it looks quite different from the NVIDIA PCBs that I had. Like, of course, it's still a graphics card and it still has all the basic components, but like, if you analyze an NVIDIA PCB, this is actually quite different. And I also like the fact that it's matte black. I really like matte black PCBs. They kind of look like they are really high quality. And yeah, so I'm very, very happy that this card still works. I don't know which MOSFETs these are, but you can see we only have one low side, whereas there's place for 2 low sides. So since this is an HD 7950, I think they just skipped those low sides. I still have to look up what these MOSFETs are, because if we are missing a phase, this could be a big problem or a pretty small problem. Like, if these are the same MOSFETs that the 5-phase version of this PCB uses, it's just like a downgrade to the more mainstream version of this PCB. If it's different MOSFETs, we might run into some limitations when overclocking, because this can go up to 1.3 volts just like that, because of the AMD card. They can do that. It's not like NVIDIA, which limit you to below 1.1 volts. Speaking of NVIDIA and limiting below 1.1 volts, I got a second thing, which is this. Also from my friend, and also in special condition. So this is obviously a GTX 480. You can see that from the shroud. It is a reference PCB. And yeah, this card is also a special case, let's say. So the first thing you're gonna see is that there are 2 screws missing from the GPU heatsink, because, well, my friend didn't include them. Apparently these screws and the back I/O shield, which, like, this is from a GTX 280 as far as I know, the I/O shield and the screws on the back were apparently corroded so badly that he stripped most of them. Like, there are still 3 of them in there. Like, there's one, and then there's one, which I just can't take out. I'm gonna have to use a drill and just chirp away the head of the screw to get the base plate off, so I can do my PCB video. So yeah, this card was in a pretty bad shape, and the fan was also not working. So I can take the shroud off, and yeah, you can already see that where the fan connector is supposed to be, there we have a little mess. So apparently the previous owner of this card here replaced the fan, or at least replaced the connector for the fan, and didn't know how to hook up the power cables for the fan, because they were just loose. They were hanging out of these holes back here. I checked which is which. I checked if the fan works with an external fan powering unit, something. It came with my Fractal Design Meshifest 2 case, and then I confirmed the fan works, and I just plugged them into the corresponding pins right here. You can see there are only 2 plugs. There's actually a third cable, but it's, I don't know if you can see it. Down there in the hole, the third cable is just cut off. So 2 cables means this fan is running 100% all the time. And this is a blower heatsink, which means it's bloody loud. It's really, really loud. And yeah, this is it surpasses all the ASUS fans. Like, ASUS fans are nothing compared to a blower heatsink, especially the blower heatsink on a GTX 480. And yeah, so this card is missing a lot of screws, and yeah, the fan is dodgy. Like, if these 2 metal pieces touch, I'm gonna have a problem. And yeah, because of the 3 corroded screws that are still left, I cannot take the base plate off, I cannot replace thermal pads, and I cannot use the Arctic Accelerator heatsink, which would be compatible with this card, since we don't have a dual DVI connector here, just 2 next to each other. If there would be one on top, we would have a compatibility issue. Yeah, and for this card, since it runs reliable, I would say, I tried overclocking it a bit, and I was lying a bit when I said it limits to below 1.1 volts. That's actually only true of the GTX 470. The 480 can go to 1.138 volts. It's not a lot, but I mean, it's the reference PCB. Like, you've got a 6-phase. That's better than a 4. So yeah, the AC quality on this GPU is trash. It's better than 14% of GTX 480s. So yeah, I wasn't expecting much of this core, and actually I was quite surprised when I saw that it can go to 900 megahertz. Not further than that, at least with this heatsink. I think we're gonna see an improvement once I get the Arctic Accelerator cooler on it, or I just straight up water cooled it, and maybe flash a BIOS on it with more voltage. But I don't know if the VRAM will survive that. Yeah, but for the voltage that it can go to 900 megahertz, I haven't tested RAM yet, but it does pass a stress test at 2000 megahertz. It does not at 2100, but it runs for a long time before it crashes on that. So clocks seem decent. It's also Samsung. Like, this card continues the trend of all Fermi cards that I see having Samsung VRAM. So I guess it's gonna behave the same. So if you cool it down a little more, it's gonna perform better. And yeah, this is the GTX 480 that I got. It's also the first blower heatsink of mine, and you can see the shroud isn't really in the best condition. Like, all of these hookups right here are broken, and yeah, it's just generally a little bit janky. But I mean, I like it when cards are a little bit janky, because they would just be boring otherwise. I think that's one of the reasons why I don't really do anything with my 980 Ti, because it's just, yeah, the core is not that good. Memory seems decent, but like, that's pretty much all there is to that card, and it's way too expensive for me to mod it. This isn't. I might mod this. Originally I was planning to do my first Volt mod on the 580 DirectShoot 2, But considering that the DirectCO2 is an ASUS card and therefore does not have a public datasheet for its PWM controller, I might do my first volt mod on this, because the PWM controller right here, which is a CHL8266, if I read that correctly. That should have a public datasheet, and it's also on the back, so that's always nice. And yeah, like GTX 480s. I know that this PCB is pretty good for e-powering it, because I watched Buildzoid and he powered a GTX 480, and yeah, so this PCB is pretty convenient hookup points for an e-power board if I should ever get one. And then like there's also the HD7950, which is actually the more interesting card for me, because, well, it's freaking immortal, and also it's a Tahiti AMD card, and though AMD cards are more complicated because, well, you've got an extra VRM, and generally AMD cards are more complicated, I really like to have this card. I always wanted an AMD card to mess with, because like AMD is pretty nice for scaling, and the BIOS is highly moddable, and yeah, generally AMD cards, from what I've seen, they seem to be fun to mess with. So now I'm happy that I also have one for me that's older. So like the RX 570, it's still new enough, still usable enough for me to not really risk it dying. But I mean, this already has a blown high side, so how could it go worse? Really. And yeah. I think I'm gonna also make a short video where I show it running, because I'm having GTX 470 vibes with this card, like me making this video, then plugging it into my test system, and then it immediately dying on me. So if it happens, I at least want to document the process of it dying. But like, I think it's gonna survive. Like, that high side seems to have failed open. Otherwise, I think it would have already went up in flames. And yeah, I just gotta have to look up the which MOSFETs these are, and also the PWM controller. It's also CHL. It's a CHL 8228G, if I read that correctly. Is it? I think you can see it better on the video than I can see it in real life right now. And yeah, so oops. And it looks like an abomination with the heatsink on it. Because it's just like this is literally the jankiest heatsink that I've ever done. Like, taped fans onto it that are from an NVIDIA card even. Like, it's quite a nice irony. I'm using parts of an NVIDIA card to make AMD cards run better. And yeah. Also another thing about the 480. Since this cooler is running 100% all of the time, I'm really surprised with how good this cooler actually cools. Like, of course I used new thermal paste, but 65 to 67 degrees while running the max voltage that the stock BIOS allows for, I would call that pretty damn good, actually. Like, it's loud as heck, but I mean, it's not as bad as the cooler that ASUS puts on their card, though that one runs with a lot more voltage, so that it also has more cores, so this might be comparable to that. But I mean, results speak for themselves. Below 70 degrees with the fan being as it is. And yeah, so that's pretty much just a short video of like, hey, those cards that I've been talking about. I think I've been talking about them. Yeah, I think I've been talking about them. Hey, those cards that I've been talking about them, they're finally here, and they are way more janky than I imagined, but they still kind of work both. And yeah, I'm gonna mess with them now, and yeah. And also on the other videos that I talked about, like the 580 show-off video, it's in the works. I have already recorded the results for the Asus card. I have not for the Lightning, and I also might have to rerun everything with the DirectX 2 because my room changes in temperature. Like, my testing system is pretty close to my window, and I had it open during the test, so it's pretty cold in my room. But I think I'm going to rerun everything for consistency's sake. Yeah, so I can't run the Lightning right now because when I reassembled it after the PCB video, I must have put the IHS on slightly off center or off angle, because the thermal performance is really bad and not at all where it was before right now. Thing is, I'm not really in the mood of taking it apart right now because it's always a really huge mess with that heatsink and the thermal paste, and I'm really not in the mood to get thermal paste all over my fingers again, because it already happened with the other two cards. And yeah, so I think I'm gonna find some time in the weekend to do it. Yeah, and yeah, I think that's it already. Well, we are at 21 minutes already, so yeah. Unkillable HD 7950 with a 5 phase as opposed to a 6 now, and a GTX 480, which, I mean, yeah, it's my first blower card, but like, apart from that, it's not really special. I can sacrifice this for mods. Yeah, I think I'm gonna do my first volt mod on this, actually. Yeah, I think I'm gonna mess with this card. Like, I always like Fermi cards because they are so easy and fun to overclock. And yeah, I have my two 580s. The other two Fermi cards died, the 560 Ti 448 and the 470. One died randomly, the other one possibly died because of me. I made a video on that. And yeah, this works still. So yeah, I think this is gonna be my first volt mod. So just gotta have to find the datasheet for the PWM controller, get out the soldering iron, find some resistors. I think we have some resistors lying around here. Get a potentiometer, possibly, unless I just find the correct resistors. Like, I'm just gonna try to get this to 1.2 volts because I don't want it to blow up the VRM immediately. I think 1.2 volts would be manageable. If I find the correct resistors for 1.2 volts, I'm not gonna use a potentiometer. If not, I'm gonna use a potentiometer. And yeah, so and I think if I do the volt mod, I'm not gonna make a video of me making it because it wouldn't be really watchable. But I think I'm gonna make a video that explains the volt mod, or how volt mods in general work, because like, it always just boils down to two of the pins on this PWM controller. They choose the voltage that the VRM puts out by having a resistance somewhere in the card, and by changing that resistance you can change the voltage the PWM controller puts out. And for that you use a voltage divider, and if you have a potentiometer you can change the value in the voltage divider, so the voltage that gets put out changes to what you want. And yeah, so I think I'm gonna do a video on that. And yeah, I got another 5 minutes out of the video. But yeah, I think that's it for the update. 2 new cards. This one's getting probably sacrificed at one point. this one might die on me, but I don't think it's had that like it survived a blown up high side. So yeah, that's pretty much it where I'm right now. Probably gonna get up being quarantined like the rest of the world right now, so yeah, at least I have some things to play with. And yeah, so I think that would be it for this video, which was really unscripted and a lot worse from how I feel about it right now than usually. But I mean, just an update video, so yeah, whatever. 2 new cards on the field. A first with this one's more of the same. So yeah, hope you enjoyed watching this mess of a video, and I'm gonna see you next time. Goodbye.